Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, throughout the course of this day, a number of member states have used their time in front of this council to criticize Israel. In truth, they deserve the criticism. They sit in this hall and pour out their rage and grief, when in fact, many of these same nations are responsible for much of the conflict inflaming them in the Middle East. I am glad to see that the representative of Lebanon has shown such an interest in Palestinian rights. However, before speaking about Israel in these halls, might I suggest that she takes a look at the refugee camps throughout Lebanon, where Palestinians are kept in some of the worst conditions in the region. They are subjected to consistent violation, discrimination, violence, extreme discrimination, and economic and social oppression. Earlier today, Mr. President, you heard from the UN's odd couple, Iran and Saudi Arabia. Back home, they are fighting a proxy war in Syria, responsible for the killing of 150,000 Syrians, but here at the UN, they couldn't be closer. They have one thing in common. Both are cradle of terrorism and radicalism in the Middle East. One created Hezbollah, and the other one created Al-Qaeda. Iran and Qatar have also teamed up to arm and finance Hamas. Every rocket flying out of Israel could bear the imprint, courtesy of Tehran, while every terror tunnel could have a sign that reads, "Made possible through a kind donation from the Emir of Qatar." If it weren't enough that they enabled the building of an underground terror network, these nations sit here in this council and deliver remarks that have no grounding in reality. In its remarks, Iran actually used the term compliance and called for the implementation of UN resolutions. Given that it is the world's primary sponsor of terrorism and it now seeks nuclear weapons in clear violation of Security Council resolutions, as well as smuggling arms into Gaza in clear violation of Security Council resolutions, I wasn't aware that Iran was actually familiar with the term compliance. Finally, Mr. President, in this list of member states, Egypt also had a lot to say about human rights, given that they sentenced 683 people, Egyptians, to death in one single day. Instead of calling for divestments, Egypt's time would be better spent making its investments in their own people. Come to think of it, the same goes for all repressive Arab nations, and none here in this chamber, mentioning Cuba, Venezuela, great democracies, the DPRK, that brutally and mercilessly suppress the rights of their people. It is time to end the hypocrisy. Mr. President, once again, this is not a war in Gaza that we chose. It was our last resort. It was imposed on us by Hamas's brutal attacks against our civilians. Israel did not want this war, and three different times, Israel agreed to accept a ceasefire, and every single time Hamas refused and launched even more rockets. Each of these rockets sends a clear, loud message: Hamas is determined to wage war.